Disclaimer: the We Are One podcast aims to shed light on the abuse experience within the independent fundamental Baptist church. The stories shared are from survivors who bravely recount their personal experiences. It is important to note that unless an abuser has been convicted in a court of law, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The podcast does not serve as a legal judgment, but rather as a platform for survivors to share their truth.
Now let's get into today's episode. Here is your host, Olivia.
Hi, welcome back to the We Are One podcast. I'm your host, Olivia. I just wanted to hop on real quick before we get into today's episode with our next guest, Amanda. I just want to say thank you so much for the support so far for this Hyles series. Thank you so much for everyone who has sent in just anything to kind of like go along with the series, some books of Jack Hyles that I can, put the photos in here. I truly do appreciate it. And I'm really excited about this episode because you may or may have not, seen her already on your TV. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode with our next guest, Amanda. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
So you may or may not recognize Amanda because she was on Let Us Pray for a very short snippet, but I know that you had filmed a lot, but you were on there for a short snippet. But there's a lot more to you, and I'm excited to kind of like deep dive and figure out who and what makes Amanda. So how did you get into the IFB?
I was born into it. I was born and raised in Jack Hyles' church.
Okay.
I went through all their school systems except when my brother failed as a kindergartner to turn in his sign saying, I'll be back next year. So they didn't acknowledge. You have 5 kids and the youngest one didn't turn in their slip. And then like, oh, we can't accept your kids. So for 3 years, I went to another school that was led by a man named Chester Mulligan, who trained out of Hyles-Anderson and trained out of Jack Scott. He started a school. We were in his school. His school operated for 3 years until he stalked and sexually assaulted some people in his congregation. And then he got a slap on the hands, I think probation. But he was Hyles trained. He would do public discipline. It was interesting. He'd have his kids swallow dish soap if they said a bad word, which is like stupid. So right at 3 years of not being an HB, but it was HB to an extent,
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, you have your extremists like Jack Hyles, Ruckman and all of that within the IFB. And then you have like some really laid back ones that still have like this basic standards, women with skirts only or whatever. But if you want to wear pants when you're not at church, like so be it. So there's different levels of it. But Jack Hyles, I like to say, is one of the founders of the IFB because there's more to it, but he was huge. He was one that made it be a big thing.
Of the 20th century, definitely for him. And if FBC Hammond has always touted that, and you described their 2 big pastors, the bombastic, dynamic, look at me, we're always doing something fun, guys coming from the ceiling, I'm driving in cars to give away to people, I'm giving my wife furs and gold from the platform, bombastic type of Jack Hyles, and the quiet, meek of John Wilkerson, who will look at you and will remember you, your name, your cousin's name, your half-sister's baby's mole's name, and is so kind, and yet will look at you and say, I don't want to hear another word, because those people are our dear friends in the ministry, and you are hurting the name of God. You're hurting our sisters in Christ. Don't tell me another word. You need to pray and fix your attitude. So you have both right there. John Wilkerson is the one, Jack Hyles is the other.
Yeah. So let's start with Jack Hyles.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience at First Baptist Church of Hammond?
He had a smell to him. I remember 2 guys very vividly. Jack Hyles had a smell to him. And I don't know if anyone can remember, but he would he wanted to be worshipped, but then he would claim he was super meek, but he would train people how to love him, train his staff and his followers, her inner circle, how he wants to be loved. And then it was their business to teach everyone else, so that way he seemed meek. So we go as little girls and kindergarten, preschool, grade school, and we'd sing and we'd bang on his door, bang, 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 bang. We'd sing, we'd whisper, "We love you, preacher. Oh, yes, we do. We don't love anyone," and sing other like old fashioned love songs to him. And then he'd come out and he'd share a joke, or he'd yell at us and yell at our workers if he was in a bad mood. Sometimes he'd slam the door. Other times he would pour candy on our heads, throw some chips at us, and laugh. I don't recall that he ever invited us into his office, but he had a smell. And then Johnny Colson had a smell. It was the aftershave, spicy old man smell. I'm now middle-aged, so maybe I would like that smell, but I still remember Johnny Colson's Old Spice stallion smell and Jack Hyles' smell. Very bombastic, very much entertaining was Jack Hyles. And you did what he told you to do. I remember on more than one occasion I used for reference because that's the occasion my parents thought they broke my sister's finger. But we were bored, and because we were good little Caucasian skinned, not staff kids, but regular member kids, layman kids, we shouldn't go to junior church because that's where the inner city segregated children went. And so they had junior church, then they had other junior churches too. So they further segregated their junior churches, and they claimed, it's because these bus routes are farther out. So this is how we're splitting them. It makes sense if there's English and then there's Spanish, that makes sense. But then there's quite a few. We're bored to death because once you get the singing over, if Brother House is just giving a basic allegory sermon or alliteration sermon, it's very boring for little kids. So we'd be in the mezzanine section. We'd run up and down the pews. We crawled combat style. And I remember it happened a couple times. One time, you right there, your kids, you better take those kids home and beat the fire out of them because they're called. My parents were so embarrassed. They called us and were like, "Oh, babe, we got our butts handed to us that night." And he taught the parents how to discipline your kids. He taught them what size paddle to use. He would brag about people who'd show them their paddles and how thick they were and the holes they drill in. So my father, he had a big 2-inch thick paddle with 3 holes drilled in. And I know friends who went through the system who would be spanked 100 times to break their will, or just until the kid gave up or passed out from the pain, because that's what they were trained to do. And he seemed really, really wonderful. And if you were to meet him today, you would just be like, that guy's great. And he had so many wonderful, wonderful qualities. But I know other qualities that weren't so good, weren't so homely, he didn't have to worry about social media where you can immediately go viral and lose everything. He never had to worry about losing everything because he had hands in so many pockets. And I really think he tried to do what was good, and he had really good, sincere motives. But the fact that it is so many years later and there are still people who cry on his death day and share the poems and will still drink his soda and will still eat a Reese's in his name, who still have never gotten past his death, and they're not even related to him. It's just huge man worship, and it always was.
Yeah. I know, speaking with so many people from season 1 and season 2 on here or behind the scenes from First Baptist Church of Hammond, I mean, they would have mugs of him. They would have pictures of him in their living room. There's a statue at Hyles.
Second one.
Yeah. So there's a lot of worshiping him. I remember seeing a video where they handed him like $70,000 or something like that, like thanking him.
That is $70,000 of real cash.
There's huge celebrations, and I'm all for like celebrating birthdays and stuff like that, but there's a difference between celebrating and worshiping. And a lot of people at First Baptist Church of Hammond and in the IFB in general. Whether they went to Hyles or they were just in the IFB movement in a way, they always look up to Jack Hyles. You always hear Jack Hyles, Jack Hyles, Jack Hyles. Oh, I read their book. That's how I started my church. The church manual, the bright pink book, type of thing. And I know you have it, Amanda. So if you want to hold that up, you have that. And, it's where he just explains kind of like how to create the best church in a way. And like you said, Amanda, too, he would tell parents how to discipline their child. There's so many sermons out there. You can look them up on YouTube where he is yelling at a baby for crying. Like he kicked a woman out.
Please take the baby out. Whoever has the baby, somebody help take the baby out quickly, if you would, please. Real quick, like. I want to get right into the message, and we have nurseries for the babies. I hope somebody's helped me back there. All right, I'll start again. Verse 10. Little college wife, you don't have to be a Jezebel if you don't choose to be. Ma'am, I'll do the preaching here, and you'll be quiet while I'm preaching. Now, you listen to me carefully. I mean, here's poor old God. Well, God isn't old, but poor young God. No, God isn't young. Poor middle-aged God. Poor 63-year-old God. Poor God. I mean, he's getting praises from one side and gripes from the other side about the same thing. I'll guarantee you, those little couples that stay here and take it and sacrifice, and those little wives that do without, I'll guarantee you, the day is going to come. Ma'am, I won't ask you to leave now if you don't quit talking while I'm preaching.
And just his sermons alone are just wackadoodle, but there's a lot of proof out there, and it's easier just to say, like, I don't want to know, like, I didn't have any bad experience with him, he was always nice to me or whatever. But that's not the case for others, and we have to hold these people accountable, especially pastors, and that is biblical. And so when you take on that role, you take an oath to God that you are going to protect and love like Jesus would. And in these circumstances, they're actually, let me get control. I'm going to abuse to control the power, the money hungry. I used to never understand when someone would say, like, oh, I don't tithe the church, whatever. I didn't understand that, because when you're born and raised in the IFB, you get told this much percentage. Oh, are you not tithing good? Well, that's why you lost your job, or something like that.
Tithes, then offerings, then faith promise.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will throw in alms and building funds. And then you have 5 things you're supposed to regularly pay money for. Yeah. So I never knew that he was money hungry, but power hungry and worship hungry, and having people recognize him was so him. And what they do at the college and what they do at the church is 100% pure idol worship. And they taught us as little kids. I remember being in the church and we're taught, stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross.
Oh gosh, Amanda, that just like, oh my gosh, that song we used to sing on Sunday school.
Yep. And onward Christian soldiers. Yes. And he would teach. Mm-hmm. I mean, like one time, like yeah. And you have to stand up and abstain from all appearance of evil. And if so many of us who grew up in the church or who did not grow up in the church, but have people who were in the church look at it and say, that's idol worship. Mm-hmm. If you're supposed to abstain from the appearance of evil, enough of us are telling that's idol worship. Tear down the statue, stop celebrating and mourning and reliving his life as if he was the best legacy ever, and start celebrating all the other people. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I feel like definitely. So like, it's funny you say this, actually, Amanda, because so when we had Alyssa on from season 2, she was our first guest on season 2. She was born and raised at First Baptist Church of Hammond. Her dad was, heavily involved in there. And then they moved to John Jenkins Church and stuff like that. And then, like she said, she came back when they came back, like she said, she looked up to Jack Scott because he looking back now, and she will agree with this, he was grooming her, right? Like buying them sweet treats. Oh, I will take care of your tuition, stuff like that,
He
but
had
like
3 or 4 cell phones in his office when as teens would go in. Stop! Why do you have this phone and this phone and this phone? And they're all your phones. He got so mad. What? Put him down. Where'd you get? Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out!
Wow.
Like,
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, no.
Holy crap!
Like we were talking about on the episode though, like, when you're singing these songs as a child, Stand for Jesus and Soldier, you're just, that's all you've ever known. Like you can't miss something that you don't know. And so, you have like the modern day worship songs that like, Jesus loves me and stuff like that's always been a classic. But when you grow up and you think like, I'm going to be a soldier of Christ, you don't really think of it in the way. But when you get out of the IFB and you kind of go down I would like to say a rabbit hole, when you go down in that, yes. And you kind of just start pinning points to certain stuff. And you realize that there is a motive behind all of it. And it really is the controlling manipulation part of it. And not to say that singing Stand for Jesus is wrong or anything like that. It's the motive and intention behind it. And what their motive and intention is in the IFB is to break you down, tear you down, make you feel like you can't do anything without a pastor's approval, permission. I mean, the fact that still it is 2025 and there is Bible colleges calling up pastors, hey, is this person a good candidate? Is this person like arranged marriage in a way? Oh, no, they're not because their family doesn't do this.
This website has a purpose of connecting singles that attend new IFB and even old IFB churches with other singles that are like-minded and headed in the same direction. This is not a dating website in the sense that we're going to be matching you up or setting you up with anyone. This is just a place for you to be able to connect with other people and begin to develop some relationships. We are going to provide videos that will give you coaching to try to help you through this difficult season of dating in your life. Is to fill out the form below. Once you fill that form out and submit it, we are going to verify the information on that form. To be part of New IFB Singles, you have to be approved to be a part of it, which means that we're going to be verifying the things that you wrote on there. We're going to contact your pastor and make sure that you are actually actively attending and being part of that church. For example, for men, we ask you if you have a job and if you have a job that can support a family. And we believe that the purpose for dating is marriage. And if you're going to get married as a man, you have to be able to support a family. That's why the question is there. So not just anyone's going to get approved for this. You have to fill out the form and we will verify you and confirm the things that are on there.
Right. Nope, that's out of God's will. What is that? Like, it's crazy, that still exists. Back in the day, right? Like Jack Hyles took over and, there was no social media. There was no Facebook. There was no YouTube. There was no, there was none of that.
Oh, my dad would have shut them down accidentally. He would have taken a picture. They had him in the Jack Hyles before, of course, before he died. One of the big pastor schools, they had him on a beam, 3 stories up in the air, 4 stories, however tall that building was, where that cheap tile was there. He had to straddle that beam in between the ceiling tiles. He had sleep apnea. He would sometimes fall asleep, wake up 18 hours a day before he got diagnosed. And it wasn't like he had medication for it. He had to sleep with his CPAP, but he could fall asleep at any time, always fall asleep in the house. He had to stand there with a bucket because we know the roof is leaking. We haven't fixed it. We know, of course, this conference has been going on. We've known about this leak for a long time, but we don't want, just in case, it to leak on guests. So he had to straddle a beam with no safety supports, no rope, no nothing, holding a bucket. And I can just imagine my dad just getting a little pissy one of these days. He could be a little blunt. I love it. Especially when my mom's not around to hear him. 2 personalities he had. Hers, very much IFB, KJV, everything. And then the rest, like, I love Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So
and I've got my crystals.
So was your parents, just so then I know, and then also the listeners, were your parents like born and raised in the IFB? Like, how did they get to First Baptist Church?
No, they were both Catholic, and my mom didn't like her parents. My mom was just rebellious. She didn't want to do anything her parents wanted her to do, and she just wanted to form her own way. She's always been her own and she left the Catholic Church, but she knew she was living in sin. She knew. She went to Jack Hyles Church, and my grandmother was so mad when she came home. My grandmother only ever bought the top name brands of everything. JCPenney is two below her. She had to go to Macy's or the nicer department stores that now have closed. And my mom took all of her jeans and got rid of them all. And my grandmother was so upset that these name brands, super expensive clothes, my mom trashed it all because now she had to be a Christian and she had to forever wear 80s style clothing for the rest of her life. They don't change their standard. They're very slow.
Yeah.
My dad grew up Catholic, and he's like, I seen them altar boys. I didn't want to live that lifestyle. And then I went to Jack Hyles Church, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then it took him a year to ask my mom out, and then 28 days later, they're married.
Oh, so, wow. Well, that's the IFB for you. That's also funny. They make, obviously, I'm going to assume Hyles does this, but correct me if I'm wrong. They make fun of so many other religions aspect of it, right? Like, I remember visiting Heartland Baptist Bible College in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And I might still have the video. I'm not sure, but
bring a snob out of me here soon.
My, he has passed, but Josh, we grew up together, whenever we were visiting the college, he knew that he wanted to be a pastor, all that. So he was like really, into it. Well, if you knew Josh, he would know everyone. Like I'm like, how are you like, how do you know that? Well, I know them from camp, or I just made a friend, like he was very bubbly, very outgoing, very loud. Me and him were very loud. We were probably the loudest, like in the youth group. And so there was a class, and I can't remember I'll have to ask my brother who the teacher was, but he was talking about, okay, how to door knock, right? How to soul win. How to win a heart to Christ. And I remember sitting in the back, and they were talking about Jehovah's Witnesses and making fun of them and making fun of Mormons. And like, when you see that white collared shirt and that little name tag, you don't answer that door. Or if you answer the door, challenge them. And I remember having a video, and they were like, and they had called up Josh, and it was funny because I was like, Josh, you're not even a student here, and you're up in the front, being participant or whatever. And he had to act like the Jehovah's Witness. He was like, well, I don't even know what Jehovah's Witnesses say. And I was like, they don't really say anything in a way. Most of them, like around like where I live, they just stand on a corner, like literally stand on a corner with like, I could probably take a picture because they're out every Saturday, and it's like this huge little bulletin thing, and they have like little tracks and stuff, but they just stand out there, and I've never seen them like talk to anyone. They'll stand around like random parks and stuff, but I was like, they don't say anything. And they're like, well, how do you know that? Did you open a door? Did you talk to them? And I was like, oh my gosh, that was just a joke. It was just a joke. Like, I don't really know what they say. And so they're like, if they say this, and they gave actually a paper trail, like of a way of papers of what to actually say if someone challenges your Bible knowledge, how to challenge this. And I will say, Josh had passed away at Heartland Baptist Bible College. And the Saturday after his funeral, I was like, I'm going to go soul winning for Josh. He loved it. He loved talking to people. He had, again, if you knew Josh and you know Josh, you can agree with me. He was a very bubbly person. Didn't know a stranger at all. And so I was like, I'll do that in memory of him, right? So I remember going soul winning, and we were at this like trailer park that was kind of like next to our church in a way. And this old guy, he wouldn't open the door, but his screen door was open, right? So you could see into the house, but he wasn't coming to the door. And I was like, okay, like I'm standing here on this thing, and I don't know if Hyles had this mindset. You don't leave until you win their heart to Christ. Were you allowed to leave like the porch, like if you did door knocking, or did you have to wait until someone answered?
I did telemarketing, and it was very similar to telemarketing, where if you can get them through the prayer, then they're saved, and they don't know nothing.
Yeah.
But I had a Sunday school teacher, and she would teach us. And she said, you could do what I do. Now, I don't recommend it, but I do it, and I enjoy it. And I probably shouldn't, but I do it, and it's great. And it's truth. So hey, I'm not telling lies, but if they don't want to listen to me, and it was so funny. Us kids, we were always having to go to soul winning every Saturday. We had to go soul winning, but none of the staff ever went. this is what my Sunday school teacher said. She said, if they just want to slam the door in my face, if they just wanted me to leave, then I will say to them, I'm just going to let you know that you have chosen to go to hell when you die, and that is where you will be. Have a nice day. And she'd walk away. And she would just reiterate it. She'd restate it, but it was always along the lines of, you just chose to go to hell when you died, and I pray for you, but that is what you have accepted. And she just going, her, ready to yourself. And I'm like, we have this for Sunday school teachers. I love your cheesy potatoes, man. Like, bring me some more of them. She only brought them once. And I still remember to this day, she literally can make the best cheesy potatoes in the world. I've never had better. Still, I'm not mad
crazy
about it. I'm bitter.
Yeah.
20 years later, I haven't tasted them. But
Yeah.
how do you have this superiority complex? And when you talk about Heartland Bible College, I'm like, ooh, I'm getting my pride out, because in HB, Hammond Baptist, I'll say HB a lot. Hammond Baptist was the school for the civilized children, but City Baptist was a school for the rural children. So that way the staff could keep their kind of segregation a little bit, even though there were, mixed demographics in each. But in Hammond Baptist, we were literally taught we are the best, better than the rest. And we chanted, we believed it, we taught it. We'd always make fun of every other church when they can't come to play in our leagues. And we were brutal. We were bullies.
Oh yeah, no,
we bullied other schools. Yep. We bullied at the camps. We bullied staff. We bullied everything, and we bullied each other. It was horrible.
What kind? Because I've never asked this to anyone from Hyles, and maybe I just, am uneducated about this. Where did you guys go for camp?
We went. There were several camps. We went to Indian Creek Baptist Camp for the summers. There was another camp that they'd take the elementary kids, and then there'd be a school camp, but I don't remember the names of those camps.
Is the Indian Creek in Kentucky?
Indian Creek Baptist Camp? I'm sure it's down south quite a ways. So yeah.
Reno Lincoln's.
Yeah, his youth worker would keep his kid on a leash, and they would teach us, and they would all sing, Brother Jenkins, keep on preaching. One of the youth groups up in Michigan, but then in Kentucky, the youth worker would keep his kid on a leash all the time, and they would sing a Bible verse song.
Micah 6:8.
A continual dropping on a rainy day, and a contentious woman are like. A continual dropping on a rainy day, and a contentious woman are like.
So I don't remember.
One goes drip, 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 and the other goes yak, 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 and one goes drip, 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 and the other goes yak, 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 and then they teach us, boys, you don't want a woman who has opinions. You want a woman who's quiet and submissive.
Mike is, or I can't stand how Brother Allen is, and I wish he'd do it this way. Listen, even if she's right, the preachers that pastor most churches around this country have faults. But it'd be a good idea when your wife starts that, I just don't like this, I just don't like that, for you to turn around and look her right in her God-given eyeballs and say, shut your mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm going to have independence, sir. You can love me for that, or you can get behind me.
Right? Yeah, so I went to Indian Creek Baptist Camp and
stole the totem pole. Then I had my mom call 2.5 weeks later because I never found it. And then she told them where it was because I was too scared and chicken to do it. Yeah.
A lot of
all IFB, you can split their faith by what does the woman wear to sports if they allow her into sports? Because we were taught, girls, you don't want to play sports because you get injured and you can't have babies. And because women who play sports, they become too rough and they get too much testosterone, and then they can't have children when they want them later in life. Or what if you develop too many muscles and then the man doesn't want you because you have too many muscles, and they'll call you butch, and you'll be
we were very
forever.
competitive. We were very competitive. I will say, going back to, like you said, the bully aspect, 100%. I've been so honest and open about that too. Like, looking back, I was the true definition of a bully. But when you're born and raised in that environment, like, you're better than everyone. and that your church is like the only church that's going to be up in heaven, right? Like they always make fun of Mormons believing that there's different levels of heaven and different, kingdoms and stuff like that, but they really believe that their church is going to be the only IFB church. Everyone is wrong. Even if you go to an IFB church, you are not in church unless you are attending that church. And we had that reputation, we had that mindset. So I was born and raised at I was born and raised at Lighthouse Baptist Church.
One of the many, there's many of them.
Yes, of Indianapolis. Let me add that, of Indianapolis. But then staff member, Brother Merv, had ventured off and became a pastor of Lighthouse Baptist Church of Lebanon, Indiana. So when we would go to youth rallies, and a lot of people who listen from Lighthouse Baptist Church of Lebanon, a lot of people I know from camp and stuff, they will agree with this. We had the mindset, and actually I should have went and got it. I will add the picture here of my camp shirts at the Lighthouse Baptist Church, because we were better than Lighthouse Baptist Church of Lebanon. So when we would be at youth rallies and at camps, they would say the Lighthouse Baptist Church of Indy. The Lighthouse. It was like that. So you always had that mindset that you're better. And when we would go play games and stuff, we were very competitive.
For those who attend these churches or similar churches that they can't recall memories like this, were you a kid growing up through that system? Or were you an adult who enjoyed the system, who had kids? Because my parents wouldn't know things would be going on. We're just super Kool-Aid enthusiastic. My pastor, Jack Hyles, he would tell the pen of the bathroom, this is a cup of water, and in front of everybody. So my parents remember this story. And so it probably wasn't, but it was funny, but it's probably wouldn't be smart to do that today. But he'd bring the glass of water to all the men in the platform. This is poison. I poisoned this. You're going to drink the Kool-Aid? And they drink it. Drink it. Every single one on the platform. Just to show that if he wanted to poison these folks, they would do whatever he wanted them to do. Totally hook, line, and sinker. And when you're in the Christian school 5 days a week, often there's chapel at least 3 days a week. Sometimes there's 5 days a week. Then there's all the youth revival. Then there's youth conference. It's just two things a year if you're not doing even more spiritual things. Then it's getting to school early so you can join the prayer meeting in the Warriors Club. Then it's all the kids clubs. Then it's the Saturday soul winning. It's the sports. It's the church on Sunday. And the kids are in this all the time. And they're by leaders who love the power, love the bully mentality of always feeling superior. And some of these, I look at some of the people that taught us growing up, some of the hardcore head staffers at FBC Hammond, I'm thinking, you have supported so many cover-ups. And then I think they're in that church because I can't imagine them having any type of blue-collar job, because they would fail, every single one of them, because everyone would see the kind of work ethic they'd bring to the table and the kind of slacker and how they'd always want to designate everybody else to do all the work for them, and their lack of commitment and the fact that they bullied so many people. And these people wouldn't survive in the real world. So they have jobs in the fake world, religious world.
And that's
not that I'm calling religion fake, but in this mentality, it's all artifice.
It's a double life. It is fake. You in this environment, whether you were born and raised in it or you were an adult, like my parents were never in the IFB until we were in it, right? They were Christians, but my parents had different backgrounds, going to different styles of churches in a way. And so my mom said, once you're in it, you get in it. It's so easy to be brainwashed, right? It's so easy to be vulnerable and just say well, this makes sense. And this went right in my life. I gave this much to Faith Promise Missions, and I was doing this, and our business was booming. So it must have been God. They were right, that mindset. I've heard that so many times from entrepreneurs that I know.
And it's sad because they split you from your family.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can't turn to them. And we had people who grew up with us in Indiana, but it was just the 7 of us. And when my brothers went to the military, the 2 older, then it was just the 5 of us. And we had family, but they didn't go to our church. So they weren't true family, because our family's in this church. And I think when my dad died, where was this family? When my parents well, we're celebrating, what was it, 30th anniversary or my mom's 50th birthday. I think my mom's 50th birthday. She wanted to have 50 people show up. She is probably given $100,000 to that church minimum because she's super generous. I think she had 48 people come to her birthday party, including her family. And just to stop in and say hi. She just wanted, all she wanted in the world was 50 people to come in and out real fast. And she couldn't even get that. And our pastor, John Wilkerson, would visit the man down the street 3 different times. He'd come over. He's like, why does your pastor keep visiting me? I mean, he's a nice guy and everything. He had cancer. And I think Pastor Wilkerson could sniff this out because this guy, we lived in a nice subdivision. We lived a few doors down from one of the 7 castles in the United States. So he's like, oh, this subdivision has money. He never would visit us until my mom brought it up to him. Why don't you visit us? Then he's like, oh yeah, I visit your neighbor. And so I thought I'd come by now this time to visit you for like 2 minutes. But our neighbor's like, why does he visit us? Doesn't he know I'm never going to go to your church? You know, I have my own church and I'm not even healthy enough. I can't even go to my own church. If I could make it out the door and do stuff besides just surviving with groceries, I'd go to my church. Why does he is nice, but I don't need him around. He's nice.
That's a good, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, it goes back to like soul winning too. Like with that day that I was talking to like the old man, like he didn't first answer the door. And then when we were down 2 like trailers in a way, he had screamed, where did that lady go? Where did that lady go? So, and we could hear him. And I was like, ugh. What did I do? And again, keep in mind, I'm only 19 at this time. So I'm like, oh, what's going on? So I was with one of my best friend's mom, and she's born and raised in the IFB. And so she's like, we're not leaving until he, whatever. And I was like, and I remember saying, no, if this man asks us to get off his property, I'm gonna get off his property. Like, I'm not doing that, And so I've always been the rebel though. So I was like,
officially, if there's a sign, don't leave papers.
Yeah, so
but if you don't knock, like, they're going to hell, so you're not supposed to.
Well, you see,
so
like
as long as you didn't leave any paraphernalia there, it would be a double standard. Like they would officially state the statement, and then that was other days they're like, don't miss a single door. It doesn't matter what the signs are, don't miss a single door. And if there's a door there, just don't leave your paper there. But knock, 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 knock. And it was double standard. I mean, I know public schools really are terrible, but I grew up in Christian schools my entire life. And the Christian school taught me what child abuse was, taught me what sexual abuse was, taught me what exploitation of children was, taught me what drugs were, taught me what lewd, inappropriate jokes were, all from people in faith. I learned this from HB kids, from our own youth workers, from our own youth leaders. And I'd see double standards all the time. My brother knows, he went to school in the same year as a very, 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 very high ranking kid's child. And he said, yeah, he told me, yeah, when me and so another high ranking kid's daughter, when he got married, we weren't pure. No, we've been doing this for a long time. But everyone thought like, wow, these are packed the auditorium. No one would show up for any other weddings, but for them, strangers would give them like the whole honeymoon. Probably didn't have to pay for a single cent, everything given to them for the first year of marriage, and double standards through and through. I mean, at least it was with the girlfriend and not with the entire youth group, like Jack Hyles' kid did. But
yeah, we'll get into that for a second. But yeah,
I don't know a lot. I wouldn't be good to share on that. I know what other firsthand reports are, but I'd be like a second, third, fourth hand witness. I don't know.
Yeah,
he's old and bald.
It's disgusting. So that's just, it's so crazy, like full circle moment, Indian Creek, all that. But
Eddie Lapina knows about that. Eddie Lapina could come forward. Eddie Lapina could with his testimony, with some of the evidence I'm sure he and Ray Young have collected over the years. Ray Young even said he has destroyed evidence. They could get people who hurt children in bars for sure. And that is personal testimony. But anyhow, won't go there. First-hand experience, won't go there.
Yeah. It's really disheartening, like the amount of scandals and abuse within the churches, but definitely with Hyles. Hyles has known for their scandals. Again, research, people, it's out there. It's very out there.
If something happens to you, you need 2 more witnesses, or you are the one in sin for spreading gossip and
Yeah.
hurting somebody else.
Yeah.
If
That's
somebody hurts your child, well, that child needs 2 witnesses. If somebody hurts your niece or your auntie or your sister or your bride or your, I know men and women who went through that program who were SA'd, and nobody bats an eye. I know 2 girlfriends I went to school with, like, we were close, 2 girlfriends raped, and they didn't press charges because they grew up in that culture. It's like any other culture, they'd say, press charges. But, I must have had something to do with it.
It's really sad. I mean, Jack Hyles, when you look up his name, scandals everywhere. But his son, Dave Hyles, is very well known for scandals. He has an active murder investigation still open to this day in the state of Indiana for his son, Brett. Or Brent or Brett, I can't remember. I think it's Brett. I want to say Brett, but
I know the documentary I was in, that investigator still wants somebody to come forward because he knows somebody has evidence.
Yes. Him and Brenda, Dave Hyles and his wife, Brenda, they should be locked up. The fact that they just announced like 2 weeks ago that they were starting another new ministry, it's like, oh my gosh, give me a break, people. Like, why? They should be behind bars, right? But Dave Hyles also has a lot of allegations against him with sexual abuse, rape, assault, all of the things. And he is the son of Jack Hyles. If you don't know that, now you do know. And he has a lot of scandals, but then you get a little move fast forward, then you have Jack Hyles' son-in-law, Jack Scott, and Jack Scott is another scandal, right? Like, it's gone down the thing. And also, let's add, Jack Hyles had allegations against him with affairs. It's so funny looking at sermons and you see his wife in the background and then his mistress next to him at the choir. Funniest thing ever.
Back to my dad, when I say that if he had social media, he could have, if it was back then, he would have taken pictures like, why is there a door connecting his office with the secretary? It's hidden by this curtain. It's and I remember that when I was a little girl. I remember when they took away the curtain and they just had the door, and then I remember, like, where'd that door go? I guess they finally built over it. I think they built over it, but I remember there being a door going in and out. Don't do that. I remember the curtain. Big old heavy drape. But and it's very, very difficult growing up in that and knowing several of the families through very, very core families. Their children have to live with the fact that so many people hate them because of what their parents did, who their parents stood up for, what their parents represented, how their families were hurt by inactivity from their parents. And it's worse still, some of these really hurtful books we have. Their parents wrote these books with horrible philosophies and forced them on a bunch of kids at their colleges and youth conferences. And they have to realize it's like a paradox. Do I support my parent I don't agree with? Do I keep following blindly? Do I pave the path forward? It's like a Duggar situation. It's difficult. And a lot of people want the sins of the father to come on the sins of the children and want to hate on the kids too. I don't. Everyone is individual, but some people are just like to make fun of, like, some of the kids are pastors and pastors' families. And it's like, why did they, what have they done? What have they done? Not mentioning by names because they get enough bad press, but they're in their 40s and they're going to be in their 50s and then 60s and then 70s. And they're still going to be people with these memories who will never let it go. Well, your father was da, da, da. And it's got to be really tough. Your mother was da, da, da. Your mother made me da, da, da. She told me da, da, da. One of these books I have, we're going through IVF and talks so poorly about you're using science to create an abomination. An abomination is putting your faith without God, is putting your faith into science rather than God. You need to have stronger faith and blah, blah, blah. Stories of other women who had faith and then conceived, but it doesn't work for everybody. Not us, not our situation. We have to go through IVF. And I know one of my teachers in high school never had kids. And I wonder, because she never said explicitly she didn't want kids, and both her and her husband were both school teachers. You're not school teachers if you can't stand kids. And I wonder if she was counseled by women with litterfuls, carfuls, vanfuls of kids to have faith in God and not pursue medicine. And if she had simply gone and done something for herself and not listened to what other people told her to do, would she have had kids if she wanted them? I don't know, speculation. But I know other people in the faith, did they just end their evolutionary line because they listened to other people and instead of choosing to use doctors and figure out what's wrong and try to expand their family? Which and just if you've been through IVF, you know, our clinic, we had 8 embryos, and they elected, to my knowledge, there's 3 that was good for freezing. They didn't let us do a fresh transfer. We have 1 viable, 2 others were pretty good, but they only wanted to freeze 1. So to our knowledge, they destroyed the other 7. And I'm not going to think 7 of my children are dead. It's what it is. But some people would be like, you can't do that because, oh my goodness, you just committed murder. And that's kind of false teachings they spread, depending on how extreme you are in the IFB or really in any religion, any kind of faith-based practice, orthodoxy and stuff.
Yeah, that is, you know, that is something that you hear a lot in the IFB is, you know, we're only good to have children, to be a good wife. Talk about a little bit of some of the books and theology and classes that you heard at First Baptist Church of Hammond or Hyles-Anderson College. Because I know, like, there was a class, like, to be, like, how to be a good godly woman or something that they had or something at Hyles.
So if you're curious, you can go on the Hyles-Anderson College website. And Hyles-Anderson College, you can try to snuff this out as much as you want, but enough of us have our own books that we can show you this existed. It's not readily available on the website, but when you download the PDF, you can see that one of their 4-year courses is marriage and motherhood, where literally you can take a credit called crock pot cooking, wreath making, decorating tables, and child rearing and finances, though you'll never be over the finances because they want men to do all that. It's just such a ridiculous thing that in college, I was in a Bible college. I was forbidden from taking the actual doctrine classes because what if my doctrine would challenge a man's? Automatically, my doctrine would be wrong because Eve was deceived. So any doctrine I come up with myself is wrong. I was forbidden from taking the doctrinal courses because I was a woman. I was forbidden from studying the ancient Greek, Latin, or Hebrew. And what do I do now in my spare time? Do the same. Word Museum in DC, little fun shout out. I'm in the DC area, Baltimore. You have to go. If you ever go to DC, there's a museum for every day. Oh my goodness. Fun. Backtrack. But we had a lot of different, I remember, name drop right here, just because I worked with your department and you were very cruel in how you treated people and how she made us lie. We were supposed to go walk and be dropped off at different departments outside in the fancy rich neighborhoods and tell them we're collecting donations for charity. And the charity was so we could sell illegally under the radar donated goods, including little shampoo bottles and little donated little hotel supplies. We had to sell them back to the girls who had nothing. All these donations, so that way she could have a brand new Dean of Women's office and have it really, really nice, and she wanted it good. Cynthia Francis. The year before she made Dean of Women, I heard her and another lady, MA, initials, and talking, and she was asking, why did you get the job? Well, why do you think that? And I'm like, oh, MA would be, in hindsight, oh, she would have been wonderful. She would have been like the best ever and everyone would have loved her. But Mrs. Francis was like, I got the job because I knew I didn't want it. I didn't know what she was talking about. I'm just getting my coffee in the staff room and I left. That's all I heard. Then that fall, they announced she's the new Dean of Women. I worked with her as a resident advisor. She wanted me to literally stay stationed outside of a girls' dormitory, effectively kidnapping, by not allowing her to physically manhandling her and stopping her from leaving because she got in trouble for going to a hotel. And so her dad was picking her up next morning, 6, 7, 8 a.m. And I said, girl, this is what they want me to do. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. How are you? I'm telling you, this is what they want me to do. I'm telling you, I'm not doing it. I'm telling you, I support you. And I think this college is stupid. And I'm sad they're kicking you out. But anyhow, Cynthia Francis, in one of the classes, I don't remember the classes, but I know she taught us that when our husbands want to have sex, and it's big conference time, pastor school, youth conference, whatever, we just got to be available and just remember to shut the blinds and lock the door. And I'm thinking, so we're not even allowed to study any kind of sex, anything whatsoever, until we're within 3 months of our actual wedding date. Even engaged couples weren't allowed to even joke or even read the marriage books until I think it was 3 months before our marriage date. And then she's telling us, I don't want to hear about what goes on with you and John Francis when you have the blinds shut in your office and the doors locked. This is so inappropriate, but that was the atmosphere. And if we teach you as a guys, or if we make fun of somebody because they're unsaved, it's okay. If we put lewd, inappropriate comments and teach as the guys, if we're teaching you. I have a book, 5 Sins of Christian Women, Marlene Evans. She was a wonderful lady everyone loved, but she had a backbone. So a lot of people liked her because she was one of the few ladies who weren't just meek and quiet all the time. And she created the Christian Womanhood Spectacular. And a lot of women used to attend this, but then stopped, maybe because we realized there's other Christian womanhood, or there's other Christian revivals and Christian conferences we can go to that actually have good theology, that actually have really good music, that actually have really good resources for us, instead of just trying to sell all the assistant pastor written books. We had Blue Denim and Lace books. I have Teaching Your Daughters. I had a professor tell us in the Christian Womanhood Spectacular, the breakout session for the primary girls, so elementary age girls, and teaching us, who we don't even wear makeup yet, that his wife is the best wife in all the world, and here's how you can be like her. She puts on her makeup, takes a shower, does her hair before I even wake up in the morning, so I never see her how she really is. She is always dolled up for me. Always, always, always. I've never seen her without makeup. And the only time that story changed was when she broke her arm, and then the husband had to help her. And I don't want to wake up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to make myself look pretty. For my husband to not see me how I am, so that another lady, she says, after I take my shower, I put my mascara on, then I go downstairs with my kids. Even if I go right back upstairs just to go to bed again, I have to take my mascara off because I don't want my kids and my family to see me as I really am, because that would be too naked for them. Having the girls in the dormitories, we had to wear culottes on over our pants and full t-shirts on, even if they're, and we had to put a robe on top of everything else. The robe couldn't go just to your butt, it had to go to your knee, otherwise your robe wasn't inappropriate. And and then you have guys out working, and they're in their shorts, and they're in their tank tops, and they're fine. And they're in basketball shorts, and they're fine. They leave campus, they pull their shirts off, and they're fine. They won't get in trouble for anything. They were very, very, very tight on us girls. Very, very, very loose on the guys. While us girls were being taught by the Dean of Women. I remember my dorm soup was reading. She says, this is literally from her office. I'm reading. I don't agree with it. And she's so embarrassed. She's giggling. She's like, just let you know, I have to read this. Let me get through it. And then never again. Straight from the Dean of Women's office. Girls, you're using too much toilet paper. You only need to use 2 squares of toilet paper. Stop wasting God's money. This costs us a lot of money. So then what did all of us girls do? Like wise little stewards of God's money, we raided every single toilet paper until there's no toilet paper in any of the stalls, because we all had our own rolls. If they're going to start policing that we can only use 2 squares of toilet paper, period, then I'm going to steal every, and some girls just buy their own. It was just, anything could be taken away. You were always scared. Meanwhile, I'm on the phone with my boyfriend, In the men's dorms, oh, we're sitting with our dormitory supervisor. We all got the Xbox out. We're playing the game and no one cares. We got fridges in our dorms and so many liberties. And one summer he went every single day. He went out to eat at least one time a day, if not multiple times a day. And he could leave at midnight because somebody came in, hey, James, I'm hungry. You want to go to Denny's? I think they went to. And they'd go. Us girls, we'd get in trouble if we came in 5 minutes past curfew at 9:05 because of work. And I knew a staff wife was targeting a girl on my dorm floor. And as a resident advisor, I would see this. I would see the targeted and I would take it to the dean of women and, well, we can't do anything about it because, we'll try. She's a really good lady. I am saying she's being very, very racist. She is humiliating this girl. She's embarrassing her on dates, calling her out publicly. It was just difficult. It was very much always being put in a state of anxiety. So if you weren't on top, then somebody else was on top of you.
Now, did you ever do the bus ministry? Did you ever have to swallow a goldfish or anything like that?
Yes. My goldfish, I was so gross I didn't even want to grab it. And so it jumped out of my hands, obviously, and it fell down the steps. And so and then I just really quick and then I guzzled whatever soda or something. I don't know. It was really gross. I did not want to do it, but I didn't want to be bullied. And I didn't want our bus captain, who promised this to all the kids, to have to go up there and be like, oh, nobody's volunteering to do this, kids. We told you people were going to swallow goldfish live and nobody wants to do it. So, and the bus captain's like, I'm not doing it. I already did it when I was a freshman.
Town, the amount of loyalty and protection with Jack Hyles. There's so many cases where people have said, I've called detectives, I've called cops up there. For anyone out there that says, well, about the cover-ups or this and that, like, why didn't nobody call? It's like, they didn't care or they didn't believe, or it's, hey, we don't bring up that church, we don't bring up that, and they're very well protected still to this day. We went to the protest at Hammond. Talk about that experience that April, put together, which it looked like it, came along really well. But there's a video of Wilkerson reading the letter that was sent and him telling them that we're not going to participate, we're not going to go out there, we're not, because
been asked and been given a paper and an open letter that's asked us to come and present ourselves to the protesters and stand there without saying anything and allow them just to tell us their perspective of us, and we're supposed to stand there and take their opinions of our church. I don't think it's probably the best plan, and I don't think it's what we're going to do.
The way he said it kind of cracked me up in a way, because it's like, that's not what survivors are wanting. But he said, we're just going to go out there and we're supposed to take it. Like, the way he said it, like, oh, we're supposed to go out there and be on the sidewalk. No, we're not going to participate, all that.
I was at both protests.
Okay.
I remember being a girl growing through that school. I think we had Westboro Baptist Church wanting to protest us once. I think another time those protests. But when there are thousands of you at this church, 5,000-10,000 people, and there's a little amount of protesters, they could weed people and separate them up, and then people like leave for their safety. So I know I saw one or two protests happening. But then I was in the first protest. It was great. We had at least 100 people there. The whole triangle lot was filled with people. It was so encouraging, and people coming out of the woodworks. But being in the protest, having people come out of the woodworks, having people who I would have sworn would go, can't make it last second, or even with enough advance notice, I just can't see that place again. But other people surprised me, and it was just wonderful. You could hear so many stories repeating from all these people. And the amount of times I was told that day, I've never told anyone the story before. I remember one girl I went to school with drank the Kool-Aid, comes out, and I just wanted to let you know that we're not like that anymore. We have a new pastor now, and I have not seen anything personally. And I don't think any of that happened. And maybe stuff did, maybe it didn't. I don't know, but I'm telling you that I haven't seen anything happen. And if I did, I wouldn't support it, and that there's good people here. And what I understand that you may have been hurt in the past and that you think these things happen. Maybe they did, but it's not like this. And you have a right to be here and freedom of speech and everything, but that's not who this church is anymore. And I said, Stephanie, I witnessed, I'm telling you, I told John Wilkerson and Eddie Lapina what was happening. Both men told me, stop talking. I don't want to talk about it. Eddie Lapina, he even used a tactic. He unbuttoned his shirt, he unbuttoned his cuffs, he rolled up this, and then he told us after, that's what I did. I was, a calming tactic. I learned it in my, spy books or whatever, reading people language, because he could tell I was upset. My husband's there, and they both turned it on me and how I need to be a submissive. I'm thinking, my husband here is sharing the story too. And now all of a sudden I'm telling you problems within the church, major ones, illegalities, and you won't let me speak because then you'd have to act. And then you're telling me how I need to submit more and follow God's lead and not hurt other ministries, and any negative word against another ministry or somebody in your ministry is me being the bad person. And I said, I told them. They turned a blind eye. This isn't just me secondhand stories. Well, I know, I don't think anything. And I point out the building. That's the building I was in kindergarten, when a lady would take me across the hall to the bathroom and would abuse me week after week after week and punish me and tell me, don't tell anyone, or God will hurt you, or somebody will kill you, or no one will believe you, and you don't have no friends, all this blah, 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 blah. I said, that happens. And you can't say that just because people from the past are no longer here, that this is not still happening, because they haven't changed any of the policies and procedures, and the people who stood up for it are still in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, I'll pray for you. Okay, bless your heart. The second protest was a lot smaller, and it was months removed from the Let Us Pray documentary. I hope one day people at that church, if they're listening, that means already you're taking the first step forward, because you're allowing yourself to be aware. But I hope they realize this is still going on. Nothing has changed. And there are so many other better, wonderful churches in the Northeast Indiana region that they can attend.
Yeah.
That don't support this kind of stuff, that have checks and balances that IFB churches don't have. When you have the leader of this pyramid and he answers to nobody, that is just prime for allowing another Kool-Aid gate to happen, where
absolutely
you're creating a cult. It's
100%. Yep. No, I agree, Amanda. So I'm gonna say some people's names and say the first word that comes to your mind, like what you think of them. Okay, so we'll start with John Wilkerson.
Meek. Wolf.
Dave
But
Hyles.
he's just as bad. Just because he's meek does not mean. Dave Hyles, predator. Sheep's clothing, can't get a real job, predator.
Jack Scott.
Busted.
Okay, that's a good one.
I think he's busted, and I hope he can find restoration outside of the church, because he's not going to find it in the church. Hurt too many people. A mantle was thrust upon him that he was no way near ready for. He'd never pastored a church, and he was young and inexperienced, and he was just doing everything that was taught with him without any of the doctrinal soundness of faith. And he had the mental health, suicidal ideations before, and busted. Yep.
Jack Hyles.
Dead. Leave him that way.
Yeah.
He did his part. He did wonderful things, but it doesn't eclipse the bad that he let happen.
It's been such a great conversation just to kind of talk about things. And like you said, you just bring up a couple things that whether some people know, or maybe it will help. Also, I know that trauma block is real. There might be people out there that truly stumble upon this podcast and are like, I sung that song in Sunday school, oh, yeah, there was a curfew. Oh, yeah, I couldn't do this. Or yes, I remember soul winning. We had to do that. Like I get so many messages where they're like, "Oh my gosh, like talk about reminiscing or like trauma block." And it's like, yeah, it's very real. So no, I appreciate this, open conversation with you, Amanda. And if you haven't watched Let Us Pray, it's on HBO Max, Discovery Plus. And they cover a lot more, obviously, about the IFB movement. There's a lot of clips in there with Jack Scott, David Hyles. They talk about the murder investigation. They have the attorneys and all that still, wanting Dave Hyles and Brenda behind bars still to this day. And so,
I don't think they'll get him for what he did to his kids, but I think there are plenty of people he's affected since that if they actually chose to not keep silent anymore, and if they actually took their stories public, they potentially could put him away for good. But then being on the pastoral side of things, I see there are people, no matter what bad they do, they will still find a church who will take them with open arms.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for speaking on today's episode and just having this open discussion and bringing out some of your Hyles books. I greatly appreciate it. I know the viewers that watch the video form of the podcast interview, they will appreciate that. And so thank you so much, Amanda, for, speaking on today's episode.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.